Welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Lens with your host, Jake and Scott. In this week's episode, we are featuring all the news that is happening at James B. Beam. You're going to find out all about the new little book, Beam Black, and the latest Booker's, well, not the latest, but Booker 2401 Springfield. Sit back and buckle in and listen to the latest episode of the Bourbon Lens. Scott, how are you doing the week before vacation?
I'm in vacation mode for sure. Like my mind is on the beach already. Even one step closer to getting there, we rented a car for the trip down, and the rental company called us today and said, "Hey, can you come and pick up your rental early?" And I was like, "Well, no, I'm not paying for a rental early. I don't need it." They're like, "Oh no, it's the same price. Just come and pick it up and get it off our lot." So we went and picked up the rental car today. So I'm like, "Hey, let's just hop in the car and go."
Yeah. Let's go. Yeah. What'd you get? What you rolling dirty in?
It's the ultimate dad vehicle. It's the minivan, Chrysler minivan, leather seats. You know, I tell my wife every year when we rent one that this is what we need.
Hey, we got one. Ain't ashamed of it. Love it. Sliding doors are where it's at. We have the Carnival, the MPV. So don't call it a minivan.
The what?
It is a multi-purpose vehicle, MPV. Yep, you heard that right. Kia's doing their own thing. Shout out Kia. Seoul, Korea. If you want to sponsor Bourbon Lens, info@bourbonlens.com. We'd gladly appreciate your partnership.
I don't think they can afford us. They've already they've already got the NBA on lock, right?
Yeah. Drink responsibly before you get behind your vehicle. We got you, Kia. Don't you worry. But no, get the Kia Carnival. We are a Kia family. Actually, I have the Kia Sorrento. Just got it back after 27 days in the shop. It's nice to have my car, but I can't wash it for 20 days, so that's unfortunate because they had to repaint half of it.
Oh,
yeah. But it's good to have my car back. We're recording this. This will go live a couple weeks after 4th of July. I have a question because I have a bone to pick as an adult. What's your thoughts on fireworks in a neighborhood? Not your thoughts on fireworks as a whole, but fireworks shot in your neighborhood.
Because I've done it, I just think don't be a dumbass and try to agree with the rest of the neighborhood on the night that you're going to do it. So you don't have fireworks going off for like 2 weeks straight.
Yeah, that's true.
But I guess if you live in an area where there's a major drought, I'll say the responsible thing and don't light fireworks. See.
Yeah. Well, we would have had that if it had just rain would have held off for a couple days, but we didn't. I love the 4th of July. Like celebrate our independence, 1776.
By blowing shit up.
By blowing shit up, just like we did the English back in the day. But I have a grievance as an adult, right? Like as a kid, sign me up. We went over to my grandpa's. He had 5 acres. We'd shoot fireworks off. It was great. But as an adult with little kids and people want to shoot off fireworks in front of my house, I'm not about that because my kids have early bedtimes. Say what y'all want about kids with early bedtimes. Done the research. If you want to come at me, you're going to lose. But needless to say, we'll move on from that. And we got a text from our neighbor that was like, "Yo, we're doing this 4th of July thing on July 3rd. I'm like, "Okay, cool. Like my son's going to be at my mom's, like no big deal. But we're going to do fireworks when the sun goes down." And she's like, they were like, "We know you have a little one and I'm sorry if it wakes them." It's like, we have an infant and you acknowledge that we have an infant and that it's little and it's going to be asleep. But yet you're like, we're not going to be a good neighbor. Like we're still going to light off fireworks and make shit go bang. Mind you, these are the people that like burned a bush down the first month we moved into this house, shot fireworks, hit our house. The second year hit our front door. In that second year, I had to go out and tell him to stop because it woke my son up every hour on the hour. Last year, Lauren was like uber pregnant and they like moved down like 100 feet. So it wasn't as bad. And James and I and Lauren watched the fireworks from the office. But it's like this year, it's like I have an infant again and teething infant. It's like my anxiety, which I don't have hardly at all, is like racking my brain, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah. It's it's always a sensitive thing because it's like, when do you do the fireworks? Everybody else is doing it, so does it really make much of a difference? Dogs are barking, everything else. But when you're catching other people's shit on fire and you don't clean up after yourself, it just adds to the, like my entire yard is covered in ash
shit
and, debris. It's like, okay, you could have at least cleaned up after yourself.
Yeah, I know. So let us know what your opinions are on fireworks 2 weeks after 4th of July. Hopefully none of your crap gets burned down this year. I'm knocking on wood. It is supposed to rain Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week, so we'll celebrate our independence with a little bit of water, and I'm not mad. I'll still eat my hot dog and hamburger, don't you believe? I'm not missing that. And other sad note, Joey Chestnut is not competing in the Nathan's Eating Hot Dog Contest because him and Kobayashi are having their own eat-off on Labor Day. So it's weird because Joey Chestnut is sponsored by a plant-based hot dog because that's what we need in this world.
Now he's not even eating real hot
dog.
dogs?
Nah.
Do they even count then?
I don't know. I can't with plant-based meats. Like if you want to be vegan. Like keep your plant-based crap away from my meat. But anywho, I've picked enough fights already on this podcast.
You're making everybody really like you.
I don't take many stands on the podcast, but fireworks with two little children, I'm taking a stand on it. And plant-based food, what it is what it is. Yeah. If you want to have your Beyond Burger, go for it. But I'm not gonna. The war on processed food. If you don't think that's processed, get out of here. But anywho, moving on to fun facts of Clermont, Kentucky. So a lot of news happening and more news coming soon, right? Like we know this for a fact because James B. Beam Distilling Company has released their Supper Club and they are celebrating, the release of Baker's 13 next month, August. So if you are part of their Supper Club or if there are seats available, that's a great one to be a part of. This is on the heels of their Bardstown collection and where they dropped a 20-year, just like mic drop the rest of Bardstown. Here's our 20-year-old James B. Beam Distilling company, our James B. Beam Distilling Company, whiskey that we choose for Bardstown collection. They also have a slew of new whiskeys. So, Scott, do you have all the recent releases at your fingertips? If not, I can guess at them.
I've got 4 of the most recent ones, and we're only talking about 3. So yeah,
we're only talking about 3, but there's quite a few that are out.
Yeah, it's a good time to be Beam for sure. I mean,
yes.
Years ago, they were taking age statements off of things, and it was like, okay, what stocks do they have? And I think they were just really just waiting to bust out. And that, I think that's where we're at now. It's like, oh, and by the way, we've got this. Oh, and by the way, here's this. So, I mean, the one I'm most excited about is probably the cheapest of the bunch, and it's Beam Black because it's back, right? Like in my mind, it's back. It's never really gone off the shelves, but Jim Beam Black was what I kind of cut my teeth on whiskey or bourbon in college. This was like the one that I purchased on Friday, like when you could go and grab a new bottle of bourbon for the weekend or whatever. That was what I picked up.
That's so true. Because Beam is one of the Jim, right? Jack and Jim and a few good men, right? Like you think of 2 whiskeys in particular on the back of bars, and the black label was readily available when I was in college too. It wasn't just the white label on the back bar, right? And so you felt like you were getting something. It was black. It was a little more mysterious. You're like, I want that black bottle. So, I mean, I remember calling for it. I'm with you on that. I think them bringing that back kind of brings some nostalgia back to their whiskey. And this one is 90 proof, right?
Yep.
Age stated 7 years old.
Yeah.
And like, as you kind of open this up and it kind of ode to Eastern Kentucky, what were the memories that flooded back for you?
Well, it's kind of interesting because when Beam Black was around originally, I think it was a 7-year, and then they kind of brought it back and started pushing it out more, and they brought it back as an 8-year. So that's when I like adopted it as the bottle to pick up at the, at the liquor store. But it was kind of interesting because there was also this weird white label Jim Beam product that was at this little tavern. It was called Nicky's Tavern at Eastern Kentucky, and it was a liter size bottle, white label, looked just like the regular bottle, but it had like this red stopper or red top on it and a red number 7 at the top of the label. And it was 7-year-old white label Jim Beam. So it's kind of like this mysterious, like, what is it?
Yeah.
And this tavern, it was all they really served. It was like Whiskey Wednesdays. It was like 50-cent pours. Like people would drink it with Coke. It was like Beam and Coke. That was what everybody asked for. Beam and Sprite. And so now it's like, this is bringing back college like fresh to my mind because it's 7 years old, like that white label, but it's Beam Black. So
it's a really nice looking bottle. Overall too, like it kind of gives it a little more elevation. What's the SRP on this?
I think it's like $30.
Yeah. I mean, come on now.
$24.99.
Okay.
So it used to be like 18.
But like, not to say anything about Heaven Hill, but it's like when they came out with a 7-year bottle and bond, they took their 16-year-old product or $16 product, $18 product and made it $60. They made it a premium product.
Yeah. Went all in.
I mean, good for them. I mean, and you can get it at Costco for less than that, but like, it kind of stinks. Like they took a beloved 6-year-old bottle and bond and made it 3 times the cost. Jim Beam said, hey, we're going to bring something back and we're going to keep it at a price point that most people can afford.
And as the trends go, Heaven Hill's already kind of stepped it down a little bit on price.
Yeah.
Which, good for them. But yeah, I think Beam is just on another level with regard to like age stated whiskeys. I mean, they keep doing it.
Well, and they have 2 locations they're producing whiskey out of, 3 really. And so they're able to produce it at a scale that we probably really don't know, right? Like they're chasing down Jack Daniels. Like that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah. Now,
Heaven Hill can probably make a case for it once they get this new still online. They can make up some whiskey in a heartbeat.
I'm ready for
it. Don't miss that flex that's coming. But we're talking about Beam tonight. So this Jim Beam Black won't spend a ton of time here on the tasting notes, but I think we both agreed it's traditional Jim Beam with a little bit of oomph behind it.
Yeah, and it brings a little bit of extra proof too. It's not the 80 proof or the 86 proof. I think they've got a 86 proof Beam. Maybe I'm mistaken. I don't know. I don't really buy white label, but like the white label's too thin. This is kind of 90 doesn't thin it out. It gives you the characteristics. You're getting, traditional nuttiness, vanilla, caramel, oak. There's like a little black tea note in here that I'm kind of enjoying on mine, but like, I think it's just traditional. You just hit me with like my number 1 tasting note. Bitter black tea was like my number 1.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the nose and the mouthfeel in the mouth just kind of match up. It is thin. I think if I had one gripe about this whiskey, short finish, it's thin. It doesn't have a lot of mouthfeel. Like it's flavor on your palate, then gone.
Yeah, and I think that's what it's a no frills whiskey.
Yeah, it's $24. What do you mean? Like it's theirs that you can enjoy the flavors and it's gone.
I think what it's looking for is like, okay, you see Woodford on the bar, you see Makers on the bar, you see Beam Black, this weird black labeled bottle. Maybe I'll grab that.
Yeah. Well, it's going to say 7, right? Where Maker's is not going to have an age on it. Woodford's not going to have an age on it. Old Forester's not going to have an age on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
similar price points, similar, on a bar.
Yep.
$8-10 or whatever.
So we talked about the lowest proof and probably one of the most exciting for the everyday drinker, right? Like if you're looking for an everyday pour, this is a good one. We're going to move it up a notch, and by move it up a notch, we're going way up in proof. Because we're going to go look at 2401, which is the original batch from Booker's this year. And we're going to go through your tasting kind of progression through this all. So Booker's 2401 or the Springfield batch. This one is a whiskey that shout out to Corey in our Patreon group, because he loves Bookers, goes and finds them all, tells us all about them, and has written many reviews for the bourbonlens.com on Bookers. So if you want to go check his out, his last one was from July of last year around the Apprentice batch. But we enjoy these because I feel like this is Beam for Beam, right? This is punchy Jim Beam whiskey.
Yeah, it always brings the heat, right?
Literally.
For me, it's always like a winter, fall type whiskey.
Yeah.
It's going to warm you up. You can start out with it, but you're going to drink it a little bit slower than the rest, or you can start out with Beam Black and then bump it up, and you're like, okay, now my palate's acclimated to, whiskey. So
it's a rock pour a lot of the times. It's not necessarily a neat all the time.
Yeah. And it's going to still hold up too. It's 124.5 proof, but interestingly, going from Beam Black to this, as far as I know, these are the same mash bills, similar age. This is 7 years, 7 months. I think in a few days, I'm not going to look it up, but a few days, 7 years, 7 months. So similar age, but obviously 35 proof points higher. So you should expect more bold characteristics. You should expect more heat.
And you get it. You do get it. You do get the heat. You do get the new characteristics. And, one of the things that's really interesting about this is you talked about warm. Like my first note on this is it's a warm palate. Like that's my first note. This is traditional Jim Beam to me. Like the nuttiness is there. Like when it gets to higher proof Jim Beam, it turns macadamia nut. Like younger Beam is peanut butter, or peanuts. Older Jim Beam is like more bland nuts, almonds, macadamia, Jordan almonds, right? Like with a little bit of chocolate coating. But overall, this is punchy. Like if I describe this in one word, punchy would be the way I would describe this whiskey.
It's just like layers of flavor hit you. I took tasting notes on this a few days ago, and I just kept writing new things. Caramel corn. So it was like that Cracker Jack, like peanuts and caramel, and like that, a little bit of like saltiness too. Yeah.
It does have a little salinity. There's also like some must. Like Booker's always is like that barrel house must for me.
Funky oak was my tasting note, which doesn't sound like very appealing, but to whiskey drinkers that have been in rick houses, that have been around old barrels, that's just like brings back a memory in and of itself.
Yeah. I need that. I want that.
That's something I hope everybody gets to experience too. Like going inside of a rick house. That's just a different experience. It's not going and grabbing the bottle off of a shelf at a liquor store.
Yeah, it's not. It's going into a rick, and not everyone, you don't always get to do it. The most recent rick house that we were in was Wild Turkeys. And it just, A, nostalgia, but B, like you understand why there is flavor. Like that barrel extraction, and you walk into a rick house and you smell all of it. And it's like, all right, like I'm about it. Like I'm going to enjoy this. Don't you worry. So, I think this gives you all the traditional Beam tobacco leather. Like this is Scott's flavor profile in a pinch, right? Like if someone were to say, Jake, what should you get Scott for his birthday or for his anniversary, and it was a non-Heaven Hill product, I would go Booker's in a heartbeat, because I think it always delivers 3 traditional tasting notes that you like: corn sweetness, tobacco, and leather.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's just familiar. It's always familiar. Sometimes they're a little bit hotter than others. Sometimes they're too hot. Sometimes you need another cube of ice, splash of water, but it always delivers those familiar flavors that I'm looking for. Yeah.
So now that we've talked about Big Book, let's talk about Little Book. So, Freddie was named Master Distiller of the Booker's distillery, Booker No Distillery, not too long ago, like 2 years ago. And Freddie continues to explore, right? Continues to do some unique things in the Little Book series. So this is chapter 8, if I'm not mistaken. Chapter 8, right? It's a brand new one.
Chapter 8, Path Not
Chapter 8. And so, one of the things that I think is really interesting, because this parallels, right? Because this blend is a Boo Rye, and they just came out with a Knob Creek Boo Rye. Bourbon and rye, bourbon X rye, I think is the technical term, is how they would say it on the bottle. And they also dropped a Knob Creek 10-year rye. So the craft distillery that's happening at Beam, right, is producing a lot of aged craft product. Knob Creek 10, Knob Creek Boo Rye, and now Little Book. And you have all the details there. It's an 18-year-old and then bourbon and then 6 other rye whiskeys of some sort, right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, it's an 18-year-old high rye bourbon, an 11-year rye, 7-year, 3 5-years, and a 4-year rye. They also say that there's a Pennsylvania family style rye, which I'm thinking is probably that old Overholt Monongahela rye, which is like mostly rye with quite a bit of barley.
Yeah.
Versus like
that's what I'm thinking. Like it's got to be the Overholt recipe.
Yeah. So, and then there's a straight rye malt whiskey. So I'm thinking that's like a malted rye.
Yeah.
So you're getting a bunch of different types of ryes, even in those 6 components, that they're all probably bringing like a little bit of a wild card to you. So you might not really expect. You say like, I don't like rye whiskey, like me. You might say, I don't like rye whiskey because it's typically too green and fresh and minty and grassy. But like with this span of ages and malt and, the amount of malted barley and things like that. So it's like, I mean, initially when I saw this mash bill, I was like, what? Like,
yeah. Yeah.
Freddie's just playing.
I mean, it's wild though.
Playing mad scientist.
This is not the first time he's done that. I mean, he's put out a rice whiskey. I really, really enjoy Little Book Chapter 5, I believe is what it is. I really enjoy it. I think I've got like a quarter of a bottle left because I've kind of savored it. Little Book is always unique. Little Book has a lot to offer. Little Book is Freddie's big experiment. I won't call it a little experiment. It is quite girthy from the amount of bottles that go out, but it is really cool. It carries a higher price point because they are doing some really unique things. And again, Jim Beam's flexing because they put an 18-year-old bourbon in this.
I think that's to help carry some of those flavors as well.
Yeah.
It's like it helps like build a body for the rest of the components to ride onto.
Yep. Yeah. It needs it. It needs a little bit of characteristic because everything else is like 7 or under. But this is, this fits my flavor profile really well. Like orange, vanilla, there's some citrus, like lemon citrus, pepper, some chocolate. Like it's got a lot of flavor on the nose, and then that flavor is a bomb on the palate, I think.
I feel like you're literally reading my tasting notes.
Yeah, we've done this a time or 2 or 10.
No, it's just funny because like you have not seen my tasting notes because I just opened them for the first time.
Yeah, I don't. I know what we traditionally get. This is the thing. If people ask me like, how do I taste whiskey? I've tasted it with the same guy for 7 years. You know what I mean? It's like, or 6 years. I get aged just a year, but like we've been doing this long enough. We are going to pick up some similarities, and especially if we have fresh palates, fresh noses, we're going to get some similar characteristics.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the big thing I thought that you would like about this one was that orange and vanilla.
Yeah. And that's just me. Like, cause I didn't know the mash bill. Frankly, I did not read the press release. Bad about that. When you post something or I post something, and I don't always go back and read it.
It's like we got real jobs too.
Yeah, no kidding. And I literally asked you when we were in the pre-meeting, I was like, does this have rye in it? Because like I'm pretty sure this tastes like rye whiskey. And you were like, yep, it's got rye. And I'm like, well, sure in the hell does. It's got 6 of them.
Yeah, and the percentages aren't broken down either, so I'm not even sure. It's probably, I would say that 18 years probably a small component of it.
Yeah, I would say it's probably 10 to 15%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's enough to, it's again, what I think you said is right. It's built off of that.
Yeah. I mean, this is a very nice rye bourbon rye, burr rye, American whiskey blended. I don't even know what you call
Now I just got to go find my jackalope from Utah, and then we could all just be a one big happy family.
Yeah. This one, it's familiar beam, but it has like this rye bomb at the end. And like beam typically has like a nice rye spice, but it's more bourbon familiar. You know, that nuttiness, that caramel. But like this one, it just like kind of punches you at the end.
This one has the best finish of all of the 3 that we had tonight. I thought it was a really nice finish because it pops sweetness at the end, which normally you get like the oak and tannin would show up. Like this pops like fresh sweetness. And that's what I really enjoyed about it.
The thing that I found interesting about this one was when the glass was empty, it totally changes again. Like I went back to it the other night and I was like nosing all the glasses because I always like to do that after I've finished them.
Yep.
And I was just like, this is like marshmallow fluff. Like, so that sweetness is still like a good characteristic of the entire thing because it carries like that sugary sweet, even though it's got that nice amount of spice to it as well.
Yeah, no, I think they're catching a stride here at Beam, to be honest. I'm really interested to see what Baker's is like. And they have the new Baker's 13 coming up. But they also have some Baker's rye whiskey coming up. Like they've got a lot of cool things that are happening. And again, you know, call me biased, but at the Bardstown collection, it was hard to beat what Beam dropped. So I think the team is really kind of hitting a stride. I've really enjoyed their latest releases, and this kind of takes it the step further, kind of tasting their halo a little bit. I think they are a distillery that produces that mass quantity that you have to pay attention to. I think it's a lot like Jack Daniel's. You just don't think about them all the time because you're like white label Jim Beam or black label Jack Daniel's. Like both of those distilleries are way more than those 2 products, even though they're their flagship.
That's what keeps the lights on. Not really, because it keeps the lights on, but it allows them to do these fun things too.
Yep. And so, I think if you aren't checking out Clermont when you're in Kentucky, if you aren't trying to go sit at the table and have a dinner or a lunch and try some pours and some cocktails, or booking a tour there, I think you're missing out. It is industrial. It is, one of the older distilleries, 225 years of distilling history, right? Those guys have been at it forever. But you got to pay attention to what's happening in Clermont and what will happen out of Boston and all the other places that they produce whiskey. And I didn't even mention the latest Hardin's Creek release, like the Origins, Golden Origins, 11-year-old corn whiskey.
Tugging at my heartstrings.
I know they are. They're like, we're going to replace your mellow corn, Scott. So, I think Beam is a place that you got to watch. You got to listen. You got to pay attention to, because it is a place that is producing a lot of innovation and going back to some of their roots, which I appreciate, all at an affordable price point.
Yeah. And, we've got a big podcast in the works for August. So stay tuned. This is kind of like a appetizer to the main course.
Yeah. This is a precursor.
Yeah.
We call that a precursor in the biz. I don't know if we're part of the biz or not, but we say we will. But man, really appreciate catching up. It's always great to talk whiskey one-on-one with the great Scott Dilley. Yes, the great Scott Dilley. And if you want to check out something new, I'm just going to let people know about this because if we don't advertise it in our normal ending. Go over to YouTube. We're going to do some YouTube shorts. Check those out. Going to be clips of the podcast, and we'll be talking about the content that we have in there. So check that out. Be a great way to catch up with us there as well. So until next time, Scott, we'll catch you after vacation. Cheers.
All right. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bourbon Lens. Make sure you're connected with Scott and I via social media on Instagram, X, and Facebook. We'd love to connect. And if you're more the professional type, follow us over on LinkedIn. If you want to know more about Bourbon Lens, make sure you're subscribed to our weekly newsletter, The Weekly Pour. For exclusive content and more, check out Patreon. Follow us there at Bourbon Lens. And last but not least, on your favorite podcast listening app, make sure you're subscribed because every Monday, Scott and I release a podcast, and we would love to have you here listening to the newest features and the newest whiskey news. And until next time, cheers.